that on Earth, prior to the modern era, there have been civilizations far advanced beyond where we are. They always say, we don't know what these are. Well, that's a big lie. We've known what these objects are since the 40s and 50s. Well, honestly, I don't necessarily think that there were ETs that made them. I think there could have been some extraordinary technologies that were used. For example, there is a record of technologies that existed on Earth, of civilization more advanced than we are now. And the question is, were there some use of some type of electrogravitic levitation technologies that were used? The other problem is, even when the Smithsonian paid $5 million to simulate using mathematics and the technology that archaeologists say existed back in the time of the pyramids, those obelisks like the Washington Monument, but those were all one big piece of stone, they couldn't raise the smallest one with everything we know now about mathematics and engineering with what's been postulated. So there's something doesn't add up there. But I think it's a bridge too far to claim they were built by ETs. But they were certainly, their construction and the precision of the stones cut, how far they were moved, how they were put into place. There are a lot of questions I have, but I have no proof of how that might have happened, except the man I referred to earlier from Redstone Arsenal area, who is given material occasionally. It's not always extraterrestrial. He has been given objects that are tens of thousands of years old or older, that are technological, that have been found in the ocean and elsewhere, that were of human origin and were extremely advanced technologies. So I believe that it's likely that on Earth, prior to the modern era, there have been civilizations far advanced beyond where we are, that for which we have very little record. And when that record is found, I think it's kind of swept under the carpet. You know, it's interesting. There were years ago when they did the Mars images, and they found that there were these obelisks and strange looking objects on Mars. I went out to the Goddard Space Flight Center here outside DC to meet with Mark Carlotta and some other scientists there. And they said, yeah, it's been pixelated out for the public, but there are structures there. And though very ancient, but we're talking millions of years old, millions. And I was out in California after I had disclosed this to some people, and a man came up to me from JPL, Jet Propulsion Labs, and I didn't know him. He knew who I was and said, Dr. Greer, here's the issue. You're right, those exist, but we can't disclose that. I said, why? It's not an operational ET device. It's not, you know, it's old. He says, yes, but you don't understand how powerful this information is. I said, why? He says, if this was disclosed, it would collapse the fundamentalist orthodox belief systems of every religion on Earth. I said, what? This science and this evidence is being kept secret for religious reasons? He says, yes. Because the creation myths, now I'm not talking about most people, but those sort of fundamentalist orthodox belief systems, they'd all crumble. They'd be completely gone. And you would have to come up with something a little more rational, right? Than the world is 6,000 years old. And we, you know, used to ride dinosaurs, you know, like horses, if you go to the Creation Museum in Kentucky. So this is true, by the way. Those of you in urban areas, you need to kind of wake up a bit about the rest of the world. But that's just how it is. So what I tell people is that some of this evidence has been kept secret, not for scientific reasons, but for social belief and how much that information would disrupt most people's foundations of their paradigm and belief. Because there are still huge numbers of people in our country and around the world who are not rational and scientific. They're really based on their these belief systems, which would be upended. And this guy was very blunt about it, and I think he's quite correct. For example, we might find out that the origins of Homo sapiens altogether isn't what we think, either Darwinian or other. So there are all kinds of implications to this issue. You know, this is one of the things when I was out at Lawrence Rockefeller's ranch back when we were setting up things for the Clinton administration back in September of 93 out in the Tetons. And he took me out at night on the deck and he said, look, he said, Dr. Greer, no aspect of life on Earth will be unaffected by this being disclosed so vast and so large are the implications? I said, yes, Lawrence, that's why it's been kept so secret. So now we're touching on another whole area of concern, and that is, now I don't think most rational religious and spiritual people would have a problem with the fact they don't think the world's 6,000 years old, and there's no reason for them to think that a supreme being would leave all his hopes for intelligent life just in humans. God help us, right? So, but, there are a large number of people, and around the world, a significant number of people who would find that very upsetting. So that's been another consideration. It's easy for hyper-rational Westerners who live in urban areas to brush that off. But if you go around the world, and we're talking a world of 8 billion people, no, they're not all like you in New York.
Imagine a civilization so advanced they don't even need wires or machinery to get things done.
Well, one thing I learned, which was I didn't understand scientifically, we understand it now, and we touch on it in the documentary Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, is that these civilizations, which are hundreds of thousands to millions of years more advanced than we are, have pretty much perfected what Elon Musk is trying to do with Neuralink, where he has a company trying to figure out how you can think to your computer, and it does things without wires. Now, as you know, Dr. John at Princeton had experimental electronic devices that people could think to, and they would react to the thought. And this has been very well reproduced all over the world. What these civilizations have are extremely accurate interfaces with consciousness and directed thought that pick up the thought as clearly as you and I are talking on this electromagnetic signal. So that's how that whole event happened. It was all based in consciousness and thought. Now, that sounds like something way out there, except when you start talking to people at the CIA, like Dr. Russell Targ, who's a laser physicist for Lockheed, who for 20 years was at the CIA doing consciousness studies, using consciousness to spy on the Soviet Union. So everyone thinks that this is very fringe. It isn't. It's only fringe because the mainstream media ridicules it. But in reality, everyone at a senior level of the intelligence community knows this is real. So I stumbled across it, and then I realized that these guys, these ET civilizations, have that ability. But I didn't understand how it worked. It was all kind of a mystery to me at age 18. Subsequently, though, I realized that the reason